All right, welcome back to the You Can't Fool You podcast. I'm your host, Rock Leary, and today's episode is all about leadership, mindset, preparation, and balancing life as a student athlete. Before we start, this episode is brought to you by the Vertigo Center, helping you find balance when the world won't stop spinning. If you or a loved one are struggling with dizziness, vertigo, or imbalance, visit thevertigocenter.com to take your first step towards steady living. Huge thanks to them for sponsoring this podcast. And also, shout out to my man George at Northeast Advisors for letting me use his office today to record this episode. Now, I'm super excited about today's guest. We've got Jack Combs, sophomore captain of the Vermont lacrosse team, joining us. And Jack's been crushing it on and off the field. And today we're going to dive into what it takes to succeed in high school and college athletics. Jack, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
So Jack and I met. I had the opportunity to coach Jack and train Jack at Westtown. Those morning lifts, we always had a good time. You and the boys. Give a shout out to Westtown one time. All those guys. I hope they're all doing well. But we had some good times with those lifts, man. I miss that.
We did
So
early morning lifts. That was the time. That was just straight work. It was
it
not too many numbers, but
Yeah, right. But dude, it was like you had a good crew though, and everybody that was there, like all the guys, like Matt, Xander, Aiden, like all the guys, Arj, like they were just there, and everybody was working hard, and we had a good time. Even the younger kids, like the Italian Stallion, that's my man right there. And so, we had fun. I miss those early mornings.
no, we still
But
talk about those. We got a bunch of memories in our phones. We be swapping every time they come up. But that was good times. Waking up at 5, no one else is up at the whole entire campus, and then just seeing Rockne there, always early, always beat us.
always early. If you're on time, you're early. Or if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late.
Exactly.
All right. So the first one I'm going to start with, I have some questions written down just to kind of guide, but I want to talk about mindset and preparation. So like, what is your, as an athlete, like your mental approach before games? Do you have like a special routine that you do or a ritual that you perform before you have a game?
Yeah, I kind of I got to be in the best mental space possible. Obviously, is the goal. So it kind of differs per away games, home games. I don't really have a direct. I know some guys go like a playbook scheme kind of routine where they just by the way they wake up to what they do to how they put their socks on. So I'm not too task oriented in that sense, but it's kind of just like I just got to check some boxes. So it's really I make sure I'm plenty hydrated. I make sure I have music, good music. I think that's my biggest thing. So I have a personal playlist that not a lot of the guys like, but it kind of is what gets me going, and it's cool. It gets me going, so that works. But I make sure I have my music. I like to skip songs halfway through. I'm not really listening to the full thing. Just kind of do that, and then it's more of just relaxing and having fun. I mean, first couple games here in college last year, didn't really know how to act. I mean, I guess as a younger guy, you've played in some big moments, but we go to Cuse, we go play in the dome our first game. It's kind of hard to just feel what you need to do because it's obviously a new situation. So reading off kind of the older guys in the room and kind of stuff, it's more of just you need to be confident and comfortable. I guess that's just the two kind of things. So whatever I can do to make my body one ready to go athletically, like I get my stretches in. Obviously, we do our whole routine with that, but then it's more of just kind of just having fun and kind of breaking it down to the simplicity of it. And then it's obviously also the one thing is kind of just trust the process, trust the training. We had our quote today to finish practice was stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And that kind of resonated with me today. And it's realistically we worked all fall every day at 6 a.m. It's just keep kind of talking to yourself and knowing that's what I do personally is kind of visualize, talk to myself, know that everything I'm about to do, we've already done 10 times harder and 10 times more. So it's kind of just get the mind healthy, get the mind happy, and then just focus on the task at hand, one step at a time.
Yeah, so it sounds like you know, you are best when you're relaxed and like kind of having fun. If you're tense and you're tight, you're not going to play as well. And that's honestly like pretty common, right? If you think back to like when you were a kid and you think about some of the best games that you probably played, you probably weren't really worried about the pressure or all that stuff. You were out just playing, laughing, and having fun, and those were when you performed your best.
Exactly.
And I was gonna ask this next. Do you practice any like meditation or visualization? Like, do you know do you practice that before games?
I think visualization is huge for me, and I kind of started that. I mean, I guess I would try to like not too seriously at West Town senior year, but I think really the past year, kind of before games, is I got just a couple songs that are kind of more relaxing. I'll put kind of some Frank Sinatra on to be
There you
honest.
go.
Kind of my guy to just lock in. And then I would say I time it up with our about 10 minutes before we meet with our coaches. And I would say I have at least 5 to 10 minutes of just eyes closed in my locker, wherever we're at, and kind of just visualizing that first ground ball. Because
Yeah,
LSM, I'm on the wing, that first play, that's what gets me going. And I aim to get that first ground ball to kind of set the tone for myself and for my team. So I visualize just in a loop, just kind of just getting that ground ball and then just making the plays. And then I've kind of learned to get better with it and kind of experiment with like different kind of situations that could occur. And this sounds like obviously this is all in my head, it's not realistic, but I think it does help to kind of just visualize what could possibly happen and what how I'm going to react to that in my head. Because I do think whatever I do visualize before in the game, most of the time that does happen if I keep it realistic. So the more I practice it, the better I get and the more I enjoy doing it.
yeah, and like, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think there is research that if you visualize it in your brain, right, your brain doesn't know the difference whether it's the real thing happening or you're visualizing it. So if you visualize that first ground ball, right, and then you get that first ground ball, it's like, oh, I saw this 10 minutes ago. Like I'm prepared for this. I'm ready for this. Has there been like a certain experience that sticks out to you, where like you visualized it before it happened, that exact moment or something similar happened, and then you kind of reflect it back and we're like, wow, that was really helpful.
Yeah, not, I mean, this might be hard to believe kind of, but it was literally our championship game at Albany last year. And this was it was our last game because we lost, but I'd been practicing a full season of visualizing plays before the game. And I literally it's the first ground ball. And I was kind of just like, it was jitters were up. I was anxious for the game. It was first championship. There's a lot of people at Albany. And I genuinely visualized that first ground ball off the wing and moving it back. And first play of the game, I literally got the ground ball and then just moved it back and we cleared successfully first time. So that's kind of been the resonation with me, and I've seen it work like that. And now take it with a grain of salt. There's not too many options out of a ground ball. Like the ball's obviously getting back. So not to say it's an exact depiction of it,
For
but
sure.
if I'm picturing the kind of the general, it's a ground ball. I pick it up and move it along. So it's enough to make me keep doing it.
Definitely. I mean, I'm sure it helps with like the emotion that goes into, that first ground ball, especially in a big, you know, championship game with all the nerves and the pressure. Like, it kind of helps probably deal with all that stuff as you start to get ready for that first play.
100%. And I think the final thing on that is it kind of makes it more realistic. Like once you kind
Yeah.
of make that transition from all in my head to that just happened, and now it's like that gets me locked. So that's my kind of my turning point, and then I'm good to go.
Where how did you first get into the visualization then? So you said senior year at West Town is when you kind of started it, and then the, freshman year at Vermont, you kind of really committed to putting it. Where did you first hear about it?
I think shout out, I think it was Josh Rickey, kind of. Remember Josh? He's
Yeah,
sophomore at LIU right now, playing really well, fighting for playing time right now, but he's doing well. And I think it was kind of, I don't know if he told me directly, but it was more of you know Josh, he's just Josh. He's a laid back, he's doing his own thing. And it was kind of watching him before games when he was killed at senior year for when he wasn't injured, but it's like he would just be so relaxed and in his own, just nothing. You wouldn't know if he was going to take a test, going to bed, or playing a game. And he would
yeah,
just always kind of have that just kind of relaxing. Whereas eyes come from football, come from basketball. It's more of everything's hype, hype, go, go, go. And it was kind of he kind of showed me how to like kind of take a step back. And it wasn't really directly. He never really told me. It was just more of kind of watching how he would prepare himself for games and for kind of anything. And he was just in his own state, just comfortable, just ready to accomplish whatever. And I think it was more of just trust of what he kind of did, and then that allowed me to
yeah.
kind of begin playing around with it.
Yeah, well, success leaves clues. So if it was working for him, he picked up on it and just, picked up copycat a little bit and worked out for you, which is great, man. Which is great. That's why it's good to like bounce stuff off your teammates and stuff.
Exactly.
One thing I really want to talk about, I think this is super important and can be very beneficial to some younger listeners, especially high school kids, is like, balancing school, different teams, high school, and also like the social aspect and like also being a kid. How did you manage it and going from like West Town to club teams to, managing your schoolwork, but also having a social life and being around your friends and like the importance of being on a club team versus also, you know, your your school team. I mean, at least I remember I feel like it's always pretty prideful to play for your school. It's kind of a different vibe, different energy than playing on a club team with people from all over. And so like how did you manage it all?
I think it really just comes down to the basis of it was just kind of prioritizing where my goals are and where I want it to be. And selfishly, I mean, you're getting different things out of club versus high school ball. And I just like you want to take advantage of those opportunities. So I think just memorizing like the end goal was at that point was for me to get to college and to play early. And so what I would get out of that is I knew obviously, yeah, like you said, when you suit up for West Town and you got your whole school there and you're running out in your home field, that's a much different feeling than 3 o'clock on a Saturday in the middle of nowhere on some turf fields and kind of playing with your club team with scattered college coaches. I think it's kind of just the balance of knowing like why you're doing it and understanding kind of just the breakdown behind like why am I doing this? And I think it's like club is first to get recruited. So then you got to know it's like you need to have a mix of kind of your club to go play with other guys. And then high school is kind of just that's like your baseline. It's you take pride in where you play, you take pride in the guys that you went to high school with and play with. And I think just kind of recognizing just why you're actually doing and all that. And then just the balance between that kind of just follows along with just you need to know I have to do both of these things. And then you kind of just tell your mind that and then you're able to give it your all in both of those.
Do you think most kids, whether it's baseball, basketball at AAU or lacrosse, do you think most kids understand that or um, do they know how to balance out, which is more important and what the differences are? I mean, I didn't play lacrosse and I didn't play AAU basketball, but I would imagine that there's more of a sense of unity and team within your high school as opposed to a club or an AAU team. Do you think most kids understand the difference in why they're playing both, or are they kind of just going and playing?
I think it's very very rare to get it, and I'd be lying if I said I understood it completely back when I was young, and I guess early in high school because you really don't truly understand till kind of cliche again, but when you're looking back on it and you realize
For sure.
what you got out of each from high school ball versus club ball. So I think it's hard to even understand that as a high school athlete, which is why it's important to talk to older teammates that have been through it and everything. But I think you just need to understand that you kind of create your own destiny. And it's regardless of if you're on a super solidified legit event where your high school sets up and you have athletic trainers, you have referees, you have lights, you have fans, all that versus no fans except your own parents at a club game and it's you're still doing the same thing. You're still trying to be your best self and kind of play and perform. So you can create your own kind of culture around that. And I think that's the one thing kids do need to understand that they can understand is that that's what your job is to do. You're not always going to have your best game, but it's you can't just be saying like, oh, that's just a club game or this is just an out of conference high school game that doesn't really matter. So it's, you gotta have that balance because it's all working towards the same goal. So just
Right.
as soon as you understand that you are in charge of how it affects you, and there in turn you can kind of create how what you want to get out of it, and then it'll kind of follow along with that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of just sounds like, if you're good, they're gonna find you.
Exactly.
If you're good, they'll find you. So say, if if you are playing, maybe you don't make the club team, or maybe you don't make, the AAU team. Like, still playing for your high school is good. Just get better and go all out and play as hard as you can, and listen to your coaches and be a good teammate and do all the things that you need to do to get better as, you know, a lacrosse player, basketball player, baseball player, whatever it is. And if you perform, they'll find you. And basically, playing both just gives you more exposure to be found.
Yes, exactly.
With that, was there ever a moment in high school where you did feel overwhelmed by it?
Yeah, I would say kind of around September 1st, maybe the summer leading up to September 1st, junior year, kind of the first time coaches are able to kind of contact you and get in touch about recruiting and stuff. And that is just people hype that up so much as they should, honestly. It's the big moment. It's the time when you can first talk to college coaches, and I think that's the time when it's you really need to find someone you trust. And that's where this
Mm.
mentorship, this kind of just connection to older guys that have been through it and are succeeding at the higher level, that's when you really need to rely on those kind of guys versus like some of these club coaches and stuff like that. Not to diss in the club programs, but it's like they are for profit. So
Yeah,
sometimes they're not in the best kind of sense to guide you along the best path for you because every kid's different. So I think coming along with that is it can be overwhelming if it's done kind of in a disrespectful way, kind of to the game and kind of to the whole process. So I think you just need to because I was overwhelmed. It's everyone's telling you there's so many events, there's showcases, there's tournaments, there's play days at different schools, and it's all that's coming at you. And if you're just trying to get recruited, you're nervous, you're just trying to play your best game. And obviously, if people are coming at you with 10 plus events, the summer leading up to it, telling you how important this season matters, like this is your make or break forever, that's obviously going to be overwhelming for anyone. So you kind of just have to break it down and just go to a good source if you can, and someone that's already done the process, and just simplify it and just take it back to the first point we made is just remember like why you're doing it. And you're
yeah,
doing it for the love of the game. You're doing it to have fun because this is what you love to do. And yeah, it's your ticket to college for scholarship opportunities, but it's still in the end of it, they're gonna find you. So you don't need to be overwhelmed. You don't need to kind of make yourself overwhelmed by doing unnecessary steps. So I think it's just important to just know that if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're becoming the best player, the best teammate, the best student, the best person you can be, coaches are going to find you and the process is going to be a lot simplified.
yeah. And I think, maybe your experience or other guys on your team, like there's a lot of pressure that comes from parents and coaches to get a scholarship, right? And so, that means playing on the more club teams, playing more games, and that is a lot of pressure because getting a scholarship is great. It's somebody's ticket to school, and that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. So, I think what you highlighted really well is finding somebody that you can trust, kind of have a mentor, a coach that you can go to, right, and kind of to just help you along the way with the process. And I'm sure you probably have guys on your teams that you've seen club and in college that have really, I guess suffered and struggled because you can get burnt out pretty quickly by playing that many games, right? Did you ever feel like you were getting burnt out at any point?
I was fortunate enough, and kind of the second shout out of the podcast is going to Coach Rollo, Jeremy Rollo, who was our coach at Westtown. I know he was there our senior year, but I was fortunate enough that he really took me under his wing, and he's a veteran of the game. He coaches Inner Circle. He's coached at Calvin Hall. He's been a champion before he played. He's been all around. He knows he's been through the game, so he's a kind of trustworthy source, and he kind of became my mentor for the recruiting process. So obviously he had his kind of hand in getting me recruited and kind of vouching for me and doing kind of the coach's aspect of it. But then the part that separated him and my process, I would say, from my other teammates that sort of struggled to get to where they needed to be was kind of just his knowledge and trust for what we said earlier. It's like if you're good, they're gonna find you. And you don't need
Mm.
to be doing these nonsense pay to play events that truly aren't gonna be the ones that are gonna get you recruited or make you a better player. And it
Right.
just really comes down to just you just playing your own kind of stuff. And I would say guys like I would think like back to Josh Rickey, who we mentioned earlier. He came from we kind of were on opposite ends of the Coach Rollo club scene, whereas I kind of started early and then stayed with him, and he kind of was more of a guest player moving on to the end. And we've just talked about how hard it kind of like just how late he was to the club scene past junior year versus how I was super fortunate enough to have the opportunity to play with him and live with him in the summers and just get better and better when he was getting me to the right events. But lucky enough, I was never too overwhelmed because he had me at 2, 3 events. And of course, my parents were involved too. My dad, he knows what he's doing also, and he was super hesitant in how he's not sending. He's doing the same thing with my brothers right now. Is not
Yeah,
overworking yourself and doing every event they're telling you to sign up for. So, and that's something my dad he's trying to tell my younger brothers because obviously they're seeing the social media aspects, they're seeing all the stuff of the new highest events. Whereas, is that really the best opportunity to make you a better player and get you the best looks? So I think it's
right.
just guys like having trustworthy sources that have been through it that are going to put you in the best position to succeed without overdoing it and kind of following the money line trends.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I think it's also kind of a great, you know, guide and metaphor for um, just life in general. Like always having a mentor to kind of guide you and somebody to lean on, whether, you know, as you go in from high school to college, from college into, you know, the working and adult world, and just, you know, as things go on, always kind of having like a coach or a mentor to help guide you because like it is hard to do on your own, you know? Like we all need some guidance in some sort of way.
Yeah, everyone needs guidance, and I that's something I really understood. Shout out to you this year also is kind of we've been able to have our kind of our check-ins on just you've been a mentor figure to me, and then it's like in turn I've kind of been practicing with the younger athletes coming on, and it's kind of you made me realize just how important that is to have someone older and wiser and is kind of knows the process that they can kind of guide you with their experiences, and it's just crucial to going through high school to college transition.
Absolutely. And we're going to get to that a little bit later and your growth in your leadership, which I've been able to see and I'm super proud of watching you step into that. Um, but I want to take it to strength training in high school specifically. You know, once you get to college, it's pretty locked in that you're going to be getting strength training. Um, but I think for high school kids, you know, training and proper strength training is super important. And like, when did you start to figure that out and realize that it was super important? Because you know what could happen is a lot of kids might not be strength training, but yet they're playing 8 games in a weekend, and their bodies aren't ready to meet the demands of the game, and that's where injuries might start to occur. And so, you know, when did you start to take strength training seriously, and how, um, and realize that it was important and crucial to your success on the field?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's once you kind of understand it and looking back now, you realize just how it's the foundation to kind of success on the field. And you really need to, it goes hand in hand. And in turn, we might argue that it's even more important to have better strength training than you are on the field because that just makes your performance better. But I think it's almost just a pattern of seeing other success. And you realize kind of once you step into that high school platform, I remember it was kind of my freshman year back in Florida, and I was fortunate enough to play on varsity as a freshman, and you kind of see those older guys. And it's not middle school club anymore, and you see those older guys that you're a 15-year-old, 14, 16-year-old and freshman, and you're looking at 18-year-olds playing, and you're on the same field as them. Because once you step on that field, it's the same. You're both playing the same exact sport. And I think that moment then was when I knew I was very skinny little 15-year-old, and then I'm playing against 18-year-olds that are getting committed, that are grown men at that point. So I think it's once you realize that this is what you need to do to get to the next level. And one thing that is that Coach Rollo would always tell us is you're not really playing for now, you're playing for the next level. And if
Yeah.
you want to get at that next level, you need to be doing what they're doing at the next level. So, and one of the crucial aspects of that is strength training. And so I think it's really once you get in to that game at that level of just playing with older guys, playing legit ball that's trying to get you prepared, that's when you need to really just start prioritizing just like your stretching, your nutrients, kind of just your habits of just bettering your body. Because like you said, you can't go to 8 events in a summer in a 2 month window and not be stretching, not be taking care, doing plyometrics, taking care of your legs, getting everything just in touch, because that goes hand in hand. That's the actions you're doing on the field. So I just think once you get the opportunity to play and kind of see that awakening moment, like I had freshman year, first varsity game, honestly first practice, just seeing the difference in body types and just strength and power and speed, which is how you succeed in the sport. I think once you kind of have that moment and you can realize like, if this is where I want to be, this is what I need to do to get there. And then it just all starts with strength training and you just build up from there.
So if I'm say I'm a freshman and I'm going into my freshman year and I want to get into strength training, right? I'm listening to this podcast, I'm listening to some other things, and I'm like, man, all right, I want to commit to this. What advice would you give to that freshman just wanting to get into it? And so like what workouts or what types of training did you feel worked for you that helped you say make those gains?
I would say the first thing was I had a Coach Bruce Ainbinder was our my first kind of coach back in Florida, and he was the assistant coach of the lacrosse and kind of their strength coach, and this guy's seen everything. I mean, from he was a military guy, boxer, any kind of thing you could do, and he's a pretty strong dude how he was, and as much as he lifted and showed the older guys to lift, he wouldn't recommend, like, you don't need to be hammering the weight room as a freshman before you're even 16, 17 years old. And I think it's kind of you build your foundation outside of the weight room. It's also the mental aspect also. And I think the more like kind of the exercise you need to focus on is really body weight stuff. And I think kind of controlling your own body and building it to that level to be able to put on a strict weight room regimen. And so I think it starts with, if you really want to buy in, you're a 15-year-old freshman per se, like you said, and you like I want to take my weights, my training to the next level. I think it starts with start stretching, start taking care of your body in that sense. Start doing your push-ups. Be able to set a strict schedule of push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, running, jumping, all
Yep.
that kind of stuff you can do on your own without kind of any outside sources. And then once you kind of you show your own body and your own self that, okay, I can commit to this and I'm already built the foundation with my body weight, that's when you can start doing kind of I guess, the real weight room activities that are going to kind of take you to that next level. But I think it's more just conquering instead of just getting right into the max and going, you got to be able to do 50 push-ups. You got to be able to do 20 pull-ups. I mean, those numbers are kind of swayed for everyone, but you got to have a baseline of fitness that you can build off of, because that's how you're going to get the best growth and kind of continue on the upwards scale.
Yeah, and I really like what you said because you don't want to start putting function on top of dysfunction, you know. And I train a lot of young kids and they want to get right to the weight and the weight will come, you know. But at the same time, it goes back to what you brought up in the beginning when it comes to whether you're playing club team. Why are you doing it? Why are you doing this? Well, why would you be lifting? And why are you going to do this exercise? And think about it this way. If bodybuilders, and I think that's the kind of the progression, right? You first get into lifting, you think aesthetics,
Yep.
right? So you want bigger arms, you want a six pack, whatever. And so most boys they're going to pick up the bodybuilding style workouts. If that was the way, bodybuilders would be the best athletes, right? You're training for sport. You're not training for aesthetic. You're training to be a lacrosse or a basketball or football player. So if that was the case, bodybuilders would be the best athletes, and they're not. Likewise, you kind of go through that progression, right? And you get past the bodybuilding, and now you want to start putting up some weight, which is good. You know, we know you do need to be strong, and I think strength is the foundation of a lot of things. But if that were also the case, power lifters and Olympic lifters would also be the best athletes in the world, and they're not, right? Now we do know you have to be strong, but you know that's where focus on getting those foundational movements, the plyometrics, the sprinting, and all those other things, med ball throws that go into you know developing your body to play sport and not just the demands of the weight room because you can't bring the barbell or the dumbbell on the field, right? You're you're just not going to do it. And so, what you said is absolutely, I think, correct. Is just get the young kid to start focus on getting those foundational patterns and those foundational skills down before, and the weight will come. The weight will come. Absolutely, right? I mean, you could probably see you got all these things, all those skills down, and you're probably putting up numbers. You're like, no way was I putting up that before. But if I didn't focus on the basics and doing things the right way the first time, these numbers I wouldn't be there.
Exactly. And that's like you said earlier, it's kind of the stuff outside. If as at the college level we're looking at we have our basics lift, we have the top facilities, but the stuff that we're focusing on is still we go right through our weight room and we walk by it and we go right to the medicine balls. And that's kind of the stuff. We go to the cone work, the stuff that you could be doing without a gym, without a trainer, without anything fancy. It's kind of just all the jumps with you can if you have med balls, you have cones, you can just do those jumps and kind of those sprints and all that foundation stuff. And if you just keep doing that, exactly, the weight will follow, the progression will follow. So it's important. It's obviously it's a phase. I think me and you can both say we've been through it. It's you first start lifting, you
Absolutely.
want to just hammer curls, bench press, and just take your shirt off. You look in the mirror. I think that's
That's
kind of an
it.
essential step as a young man.
Yeah,
You gotta go through
I
that.
agree.
Yeah.
we
But then
all we
it's
all go through it.
exactly. We all been there. So it's important to kind of go through that. And I'm not shaming that because it is an aspect of growing up as a man and kind of growing up in the weight room and environment. But then it's once you can have that edge of someone first telling you that this is what you need to prioritize now, that all will follow. I think that's what's going to set you up for the most success.
Absolutely. Another important thing that I think mainly, I guess what you start thinking about college, junior year of high school, right, and then senior year, and then it comes up pretty quick. And I know that I would argue that one of the biggest transitions in your life is that high school to college and that freshman year. For those kids that are seniors now that are getting ready to make that transition, what advice would you give to them? What were some of the biggest challenges that maybe you went through and that you've seen, your classmates go through as well? Because everybody's going to have a little something different and what makes that transition difficult. So what advice could you give to those seniors that are about to embark on that journey?
I would say at the time point, no, excellent question because I've obviously talked to you a lot about that my senior year because we spent a lot of time together. But I think now the perfect time is you're starting. If you're a senior right now, you maybe have an idea where you're going to college. You maybe already signed. You're maybe still looking or kind of figuring out your next 4 years. But I think it's the question I would ask myself, and I've definitely asked you this before, is what are we supposed to do? Classes are kind of easier. You're somewhat set with where you're maybe going, and you kind of it's kind of just a waiting game as it felt like for me. It's like I have 4 more months out of school. I've kind of done all my stuff for school. I've set everything in place. It's now what? And I think the most important thing is kind of the most important thing I helped myself and we were able to figure out is kind of is knowing you and kind of realizing when you have kind of that pressure of getting recruited, getting committed, really focusing on school, your SATs, your ACTs, that kind of stuff is past. Now it's just you. And I think those 5 months are kind of what sets you up for how what kind of athlete, what kind of player you're going to be at college, where you need to know who you are as much as possible mentally and physically. Because now is that time when your parents aren't really on your back anymore. Your teachers aren't really on your back anymore. It's that senior last couple months. And I think that's what kind of separates you. And you need to just kind of focus on what do I need to do that I'm going to need at the next level. And then you
Mm,
look at your older guys, you look at your teammates, and that's when you have the time. Yeah, you can have your fun and yeah, you want to spend time with your friends, but that's when you can kind of establish who you want to be these next 4 years. And
yeah.
it kind of goes in turn with just like visualizing where I want to be at. And you kind of live, if you start living the life you think you're going to live, it's going to eventually fall into place. So at college, you probably talk to the college guys already if you're committed. I would know I had a 6 a.m. practice. We would go to every 6 a.m. workout with you. It's kind of setting that tone of just, I'm going to have to do this eventually. Why not start now? And that
Yeah.
senior kind of last semester is, I think, the perfect time. I know it's hard because you want to have fun and you're kind of trying to enjoy your last moments, but there's a perfect balance of that. There's a perfect balance because that's how college life is. You have the freedom to have fun and get the work in. So I think the most important thing you can do is kind of establish a routine that's going to help you mentally, physically, and then prioritize time with friendships. I mean, how important do you think it is to kind of just spend time with friends? Obviously, you've seen us all together the senior year, but it's just so important, I think.
Dude, 100%. I think friendship is one of the most important things that you could have, and one of the most, valuable things that you can have in life. So creating good habits and hanging around good friends, right? The earlier you can start to understand that, you know, it's going to help build those habits, because you're not going to be venturing off doing the things that you're not supposed to be doing. Um, and so, yeah, don't wait till the time comes to start acting a certain way. If you you know start acting that way now, because you're gonna those habits then become harder to break the longer you put it off. So, oh, I'm gonna wait till I get to school, once we start having 6 a.m. workouts, to start waking up at 6 a.m. It's gonna, just start committing to it now.
Yeah.
Don't push it off.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of the things I guess my kind of my wording of choice to kind of help me get through that was I'm gonna have to do this eventually. Like it may
Yeah.
seem like a lot or it may seem far away as seems so far away when you're a senior. It's college seems forever away. You're just waiting to kind of get there at that point. But it's knowing I'm gonna have to do this in 6 months. Why not start doing it now and just building that routine? Like you said, the longer you're doing it, the harder it is to break. So you have the time now, you have the friends around you, you kind of have that no, there's a kind of no consequences in your kind of sense of just doing you. Like this is the time you kind of find yourself, your friend group, and who you guys want to be. And I guess the better people, you have that luxury of being with your guys. You have that luxury of not really real responsibilities. Like as much as it may seem like it at the time, your responsibility is going to start college and after college. So it's kind of just capitalize that time you have with your friends, with your kind of sense of freedom, and just use that for the better to kind of better yourself and create a good pattern and routine.
Yeah, because the reality is, as you start to go through life, it doesn't necessarily get any easier. And so, you know, to prepare for that transition, start envision how you want to act, and start acting that way now. Don't put it off, you
Right,
know.
exactly.
And so lastly, what I want to talk about here, and like I mentioned earlier, something that I've seen you grow into, and being named captain as a sophomore. I mean, that's that's pretty high praise, and that's something, when I found out and you told me that, I was super proud of you, and you should be proud of that yourself, because it's an amazing accomplishment. Um, what does leadership mean to you? How do you approach your role? How do you approach your role as captain?
I know it's yeah, yeah, awesome. I think that's something we've talked about numerous times as we've been lucky to have conversations about kind of leadership and everything around this. And I'll let you get into your definition later. Is that you told me this before, but I don't want to take the fame from you with your good quote of it. But the same answer I think I gave you a couple months ago when we first talked about this and kind of been building off it, as I think it just leadership comes back to trust. And I'm honored and so grateful to be called the leader of this team. And those guys have trust in me. I think me being a leader form is just a show of their trust in me to be a leader. And it's kind of more, it's all aspects of it is in turn, they trust me to be a leader. I trust them to be a leader as well. And it kind of works hand in hand when it's all about on the field and off the field. Like I know what I need to do because they have trust in me to do that thing. So whether it's on the field to make a play that I would need to make, right? They have trust I'm going to make that play. When in turn, I trust to make that play because of them. So I think it kind of works in a circle for me with that aspect of leadership, as it's really all about trust. And then as you move toward off the field, it's kind of doing all the right things. Is trying to is I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. Everyone messes up, and I've had plenty of mess ups where the guys tell me And it's fortunate enough that we have that level of communication when they tell me where I was wrong in a situation. And maybe I didn't handle the situation the best I could on or off the field. And it's that kind of trust that they do want what's best for me and I want what's best for them. So they know I was doing that with good intentions, and they have the ability to tell me that that maybe wasn't the best way. And in turn, I have the ability to tell them the same thing and also take that into consideration of kind of receiving news because I trust that they have that trust in me to kind of succeed and keep moving forward with that. So I think
Yeah, I
leadership
think
is kind of trust between guys.
totally, and I think what you said, how you finished that off is perfect. Being able to give feedback, but also being able to receive feedback is a huge is a huge thing. If you can only dish it out, but you can't receive feedback and from anybody else, like that's not necessarily a great trait to have. Feedback or criticism, feedback, you could, I think it just kind of comes back to how do you choose to view it. It's just information. You can do whatever you want with that information.
Yeah.
Don't classify it as good. Don't classify it as bad. It's just information. Take the information, take the feedback, and use it. Um, and I think it's important to point out that yes, you're a captain, right? And you have that word, the C, captain, and that kind of identifies your role. And being a captain, you know, is related to leadership. But I also think it's important to point out that you don't need the title of anything to be a leader, right? You don't have to be captain of the team to be a leader. You don't have to be the owner of a business to be a leader, right? Everybody has the capabilities to be a leader. So I think that's something to point out as well, is that you don't need the title to be able to be a leader. There's plenty of guys on the team that can be great leaders that don't have the captain title, right?
100%.
And
Yep.
I'm sure you can name a ton of guys that embody that.
Yeah, totally.
Another another important thing about leadership that I want to address is failures. You know, I think as a leader, how do you view failure?
Um, so one of the things that's kind of had me thinking about that too is your first how you first started this kind of topic is where as being a leader is it's important to give feedback as much as receiving it. And then I think I know at in this leadership role, obviously a leader should be given some feedback, some good constructive criticism, but also I think in a leadership role, you are susceptible to receiving more criticism and more kind
Yes.
of more stuff that you might not have thought earlier is now maybe characterized as a failure. So I think as you kind of grow into different roles of more leadership and positions, is you're going to realize kind of just a different perspective on failure from yourself and other people as you continue to hold yourself to a higher standard and everyone else is kind of holding you to a higher standard, you are kind of able to see where something can turn into a failure and where something's not going to turn into a failure. And I think that's the kind of thing is we always say it's like it's you never really fail, even though it's a failure, it's more of a lesson. And
Yep.
that's kind of the quote around that. But and I really do think that is true though. And one of the quotes I've learned is it's like failure is it's very emotional. It's never as big outside as it is in your head when you're talking about kind of the micro failures of stuff that is going to occur day to day in a division in a student athlete's lifestyle. And one of the quotes I've known is it's not you don't need to push failures away. You don't need to act on failures in a good or a bad way. So in a sense, if you fail on or off the field, you don't need to kind of immediately act positively. Whereas my example that would be a bad game, you tell yourself you failed that game, right? You weren't there for your team. That doesn't mean you need to just kind of change everything you've been doing. That doesn't need you kind of just ignore that and move on. Because I think that in turn too is it's you need to grow from that experience. So the thing we've been working on is kind of trying to let that emotion of failure just sit and kind of feel what that feels like and understand what happened to that point and what you're going to do to fix that. Because you can't control what's already happened. And my big thing is control the controllables. You can't
Yep.
control anything in the past. That's done for. But you can control what happens next. So you need to just have that open mindset of the ability, one, to admit that I failed, but then two is to be mature enough emotionally and have enough support around you to sit with that failure and work through that. And it's hard to do. It's not easy to you make a bad play. It's not easy to just flush that and move on. But everyone makes bad plays, and the best players are the ones that are able to just immediately learn from that and just kind of correct it for moving forward. So I think
Yeah.
that's how I've been trying to treat my failures and moving forward. And luckily enough, I have enough good group of guys to talk that about. 'Cause it's important to express one, how you're feeling about that, and two, to get an outside opinion on what they think you could have done. And then that's kind of the formula to just sit with the failure and progress forward through that.
Yeah, and I have a couple good quotes that I want to highlight that, highlight everything you just said. And, the failure sometimes is a shot at our ego, right? And Robin Sharma has a quote, a bad day for the ego is a great day for the soul. So like sometimes it's good to have your ego checked, right? Kind of centers you a little bit. And I was listening to Alex Hormozzi's podcast, and he was talking about failure, and he was like, failure, your chance of if you fail, your chance of success goes up. It's almost a prerequisite to take an action, right? So if you take action, you're bound to fail. And if you're never willing to lose, you're never going to win. And I thought him defining kind of failure in that context was like, brought a lot of clarity to it, right? If if you're just scared to lose all the time, you're not willing to lose, you're never going to win because to fail requires taking action. But if you never take action, you're never going to win. And so, you know, I thought that highlighted the idea of failure pretty good. It was good. It was a good framework to look at it from.
Yeah, agreed. And like you just said at the end there, it's you to fail, you need to have taken that action. And that's honestly as it does shatter your ego with a fail, it's you wouldn't be anywhere better or different if you never took that action. So that's kind of the reverse way to look at it is like, yeah, I did fail, but I would have done nothing before that. So I think the first victory of kind of in your head to know one for your ego when that's kind of low, and then two for your soul, like you said, is to know that that action is required. And if you truly want to do something different, you need to take that action. And regardless of the outcome, an action is a positive. We like to say it's like that action, that first step is always going to be a positive because you did it. So regardless of the failure, regardless of the success that comes immediately from that, as you move forward with progressive actions, that's where you see the success and that's where you see that growth for the soul and for your mental clarity.
As you've grown into this leadership position, what advice would you give to your younger self?
It's a good question. That's a tough question.
Your high school. I got two last questions for you. They're going to be pretty. They're going to be pretty thoughtful. If you don't have an answer right away, I'll give
Yeah.
you a minute to think about it. But you're as a freshman, sophomore, high school. What advice would you give to yourself?
If I was looking back on my younger self and kind of realizing just I think the initial thing I would think would be kind of not worry, not get overwhelmed about stuff. Because when you kind of look on, you grow in life, you realize how little some things mattered when back then they seemed like the biggest issue. But kind
Mm,
of, and that was my first kind of thought when I kind of started to grow up and get into different roles. But now that I kind of look back, and even as looking back just last year, it's that little stuff that you are worried about that is essential in kind of growth. So I would just say, as I'm trying to work on now, my biggest thing now is kind of learn from each experience and to kind of just not be so egotistical and just I'm this and this and this. I can't do this. I can do this. Is to kind of take a step back. And I would tell my younger self is every negative I experienced, every positive I experienced was to, or like our coach says, is never get too high, never get too low. And I think
yep.
that's kind of the perfect quote to just for continued growth and success because you're never putting yourself on a pedestal when stuff's going very well, everything's sweet, and then you're knocking yourself too low to the point where you can't even function or grow or learn or do anything when you're too low. So I guess my advice to the younger self would be to kind of just learn from everything and just take everything with the perspective on growth and know that understand I wish I could understand this, you are growing. The high school is the growing phase. It's transition from being a kid to being a college athlete or a successful person in the workforce. That's your growing period. And I think you just need to understand you are in that growth period. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do great things. You kind of just have to have that balance and know the process behind the failures, the process behind the good things. And that's in turn knowing yourself. And once you kind of understand where you are at mentally and physically in terms of success and failures, then you can keep growing from those experiences. So when you see them again later on in life or similar opportunities, you kind of know what you need to do to give yourself the best opportunity.
Awesome. And lastly, kind of as a closing tradition for this podcast, because it is called the You Can't Fool You podcast, we get a pretty deep question here. What was one time you were able to fool everybody else, but you couldn't fool yourself?
You can't fool you. I mean, that's the code of the podcast, but you can't fool the one time I couldn't fool um I would say it's immediately first thing that comes to my mind is our winter, is our break, right? And this is a pretty recent example, but it's we go from a strict fall of 5:30 a.m. to 8:30. That's not, don't quote me on the times because we're obviously limited in hours, but from the sense of waking up to showering and eating and closing, the kind of time you spend of just a strict workout regimen of training and everything. And then you go home, and I'm lucky enough to call Florida my home, and it's like it's so easy to just not do something, to just
Mhm.
you just want to relax and have fun and do nothing. And then it's you really can't fool you. And it's there's days when yeah, you need your off days, and there's days I took off, but it's and I can make it seem that like, yeah, I got the work into my team. Maybe it's like I just won't send a picture or something to my team as everyone's kind of sending in stuff that they're doing. But then I know when I'm going to bed that night is I fool people, but I can't because I know you know what I did, and I know what I did, and I can't. It's never a good feeling. So I guess it's taking shortcuts. Is you really can't fool yourself with the shortcuts because you know you took a shortcut, and if you're calling it a shortcut, you already took it. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, and just that kind of helps me stay motivated and stay on top of things.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the person, like it says in the poem, your final reward is heartbreaking tears if you cheated the man in the glass. So the only person that's getting hurt at the end of the day is yourself.
Exactly.
Well, Jack, dude, this has been such an insightful conversation. It's been awesome. It's clear that your success, it's not just about the talent that you have on the lacrosse field. It's about your mindset, preparation, and just putting in the work every day. And I'm super proud of all your hard work and where you've ended up. And I'm excited to see, what the rest of your career and the rest of your life turns out. So to all the high school kids and other college athletes out there, I hope if you're listening to this, you're taking notes because Jack's journey is proof that when you combine, the right mindset, strong work ethic, amazing things can happen. So, Jack, thanks for being on. And big thanks again to the Vertigo Center for sponsoring this episode. If you've enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your teammates. I'm your host, Rockne O'Leary, and thanks for tuning in to the You Can't Fool You podcast.